This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about What If Episode 4. What if Doctor Strange lost his heart, not his hands?
If the other Strange succeeds in reversing an absolute point in our universe...
You mean saving Christine?
He cannot save her, Stephen. The resulting temporal paradox will destroy this universe. Our time is running out. I fear the only sorcerer strong enough to stop Doctor Strange is... you, Doctor Strange.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to this strange podcast indeed. Yes, it's the Defenders podcast on TVPI, and we're looking at episode 4 of What If? What if Doctor Strange lost his heart, not his hands? I am one of your strange hosts, John.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek.
And I'm rounding out the group. I am Chris.
We're all back together after our holiday.
Back in the saddle. Or dare I say it, harness.
Okay.
I was going to say, we should probably change the name of this episode to What If This Was About Doctor Strange and John Had to Come On.
yes, John was supposed to have another episode off because we have his mom visiting this week.
Yes,
which is really nice.
Which is strange indeed after 18 months.
Yeah,
and that is Strange Tales.
Yes, but we did say that the only way he would join us for this episode, the only way that he must join us for this episode, if it's about Doctor Strange. And of course, that is the episode about Doctor Strange. We saw the name pop up for the episode as it arrived on Disney Plus on Wednesday morning, and he went, okay, I guess I'm recording on Saturday.
Yes. Indeed. I mean, we're a little late this time, but that's we're back from holiday. And of course, this episode brought us 2 timelines of a single person, as in Doctor Strange, in one universe that is part of a multiverse. So this was very layered indeed. And dare I say it, dimensions and maybe a few realms as well. As
cloaks, don't forget the layered cloaks.
Layered
there you
cloaks
go.
And a lost library, wherever it was lost. I don't know.
Yeah. Lots to talk about in this episode. One thing I do want to say up front, because I'm a big podcast fan and I want to make sure that everybody knows exactly how we're covering our stuff on the podcast. As we said, we're a little bit late this week with this episode because we're on holidays. We'll be back to normal from next week onwards. But that does mean that our Shang-Chi coverage is going to be delayed. We've missed it in the cinema. It came out this weekend. We're not going to see it in the cinema. So unfortunately, we're probably going to be lining it up when it releases on Disney Plus, which is in 45 days, I believe. So it should be coming out in October. So we'll probably be able to all sit down and chat about Shang-Chi, which I've heard fantastic things about. I've heard great reports from fans from Marvel, and stay through the credits because there's 2 post-credit scenes. And of course, everybody always stays through the credits for Marvel, right?
You have to. It's a stay now. You have to.
It is, absolutely.
So if you do see it between now and when we record, send in your thoughts. You can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com and we'll discuss them when we do our Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings podcast.
Definitely. I cannot wait to see it.
Me too.
Yes. With that, gentlemen, should we jump in to the strange tales that is What If?
Definitely. Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Once again, executive producers on the show, Brian Andrews, AC Bradley, Brad Winterbaum, with Kevin Feige. Head writer for the show is AC Bradley, who wrote this episode once again, and the episode's directed by Brian Andrews. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the episode?
Sure. One small choice can change the world or destroy a universe. Christine Palmer accepts Stephen Strange's invitation to the medical dinner in his honour, but that fateful night results in the death of Christine, and Stephen Strange survives the car crash and his hands are untouched. But Stephen realises how close he and Christine were. Racked by grief, Stephen searches for meaning and learns the mystic arts at Kamar-Taj under the direction of the Ancient One. 2 years later, still grieving his lost love, Doctor Strange attempts to use the Eye of Agamotto repeatedly to save Christine. In all scenarios, she dies. An echo of the Ancient One warns Stephen that Christine's death is an absolute point in the timeline that cannot be undone, and using the eye will destroy the fabric of reality. But the arrogant Strange refuses to listen, so the Ancient One splits Strange into 2 alternate versions on the same timeline. One accepts Christine's death and heads for tea with Wong, while the other heads on a journey to the lost library of Cagliostro in his attempt to save Christine. At the library, with the help of the mystical Obeng, the Sorcerer Supreme discovers in the Book of Cagliostro how to gain the power to break the absolute point by absorbing the magical energy of other mystical creatures, in particular that of a powerful tentacled creature. The more he absorbs, the more his grasp of reality fades, taking on the forms and powers of his prey. He becomes Strange Supreme. He must finally confront and absorb the energy of himself contained in the alternate Doctor Strange. In the final battle, Strange Supreme overpowers Doctor Strange and absorbs his powers, using it to finally resurrect Christine. But his actions tear reality apart, disintegrating the universe around him, including Christine. Strange Supreme begs the Watcher for help, but he refuses to intervene. As Christine fades from Strange's hold, leaving Strange Supreme to grieve alone as his universe collapses.
I am getting flashbacks to our comic book coverage of Doctor Strange, John. This really
Yes.
felt like a proper animated version of some of the Doctor Strange comics. There was obviously the with the what if twist on it, but it did feel like it was incorporating lots of the elements that you would see in the Doctor Strange comics. We usually have our initial point for our top 3 for the episode. What if we had seen it before? What movie was this involved in? And this is simply Doctor Strange. It's the first one of the episodes so far that hasn't really incorporated anything other than the Doctor Strange movie, and almost feels like something that sits alongside it. We can watch it now every time we watch Doctor Strange.
Yeah, no, this is simply just the Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, they really condense it. I mean, we were saying about how, and we've gotten a lot of feedback saying how they feel like the movie is condensed into half an hour. Mm-hmm. This actually was the movie condensed primarily into the first maybe 10 minutes.
Exactly.
I mean, to the point to the point of, Dormammu, I've come to bargain. And then it is like this whole new element of the story, actually.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's the thing I guess that distinguishes this possibly from what we've seen. It's just, it's scale.
Yeah.
It's simply scale. This is where the butterfly flaps its wings and you get a hurricane. And it is at the universal scale. I think the others we've seen it on Earth, manifested changes on Earth.
Yeah.
It's manifested them within the galaxy or the wider universe in space.
Mm-hmm.
Things we don't know whether they've happened or not. Say, like from the T'Challa episode with Ego, he was still a threat, even though Thanos had been kind of nullified as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Here, the threat is ultimately coming from one of the good guys, really.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or even if that good guy generally does sit slightly aloof from the likes of the Avengers and what have you, and decides to, meditate whilst there's a civil war going on.
Yes, he has his own defenders to look after.
Exactly.
I like this because this for me is the getting closer and closer to the premise of what the What If comic books,
Absolutely.
which is they to date we've had a lot based on the premise of the films.
Yeah.
This is now going, okay, Doctor Strange, there's been one, here's beyond.
Yeah.
Here's what happens beyond. That one small bit changes. Majority of it stays the same. The whole first film pretty much stays the same. It's just he has his hands and he lost his heart. And then this is the ramifications of that. And I was just so impressed by the scale of what they did. And by the scale, I mean from a story narrative perspective. They basically very much, as John has said a few times, the reins, they've taken the reins off the writers in this one. Went, do you know what? Here, tell your story.
Yeah.
What would you like to see? What is that one weird thing? And that's what we started to get.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we've always said that when we were doing our coverage of Doctor Strange comic books, that when a writer gets to work on Doctor Strange, they really get to play in a completely different universe a lot of the time. They don't have to stick to the standard Earthbound heroes kind of storylines. They can get and play with this mad universe that he tends to occupy. I think they did a great job here. Let's talk about that one small change then. Our second kind of major point. What is the change here? Because it's kind of set up a little bit from the Watcher at the beginning. This isn't going to be like the rest of the stories he's told. He introduces it as you know, what if they make the wrong change? What if they make the wrong choice and wrong decision? And what if it goes badly effectively and affects the universe really weirdly or really strangely, of course? So there's a few changes really, isn't there? The one big one from the movie side, there's an early moment, in Doctor Strange, the movie, where there's a reference to the fact that Stephen had a relationship with Christine in the past, but it wasn't really a relationship, which he specifically says didn't even last. There was nothing there. And he asks her along to a dinner with him, and she turns him down, saying she doesn't want to go to another place where he's just going to bore everybody with his speeches.
Yeah, and it's about him, and it's not about her. That's the thing. And I think, I guess in the movie, certainly now with this companion piece, in a sense, here they are playing up that actually, Strange is more involved with Christine, or I think for me, it's more that the change of her accepting the invite and coming along, her death then really hits home to Stephen, how much he cared for her, how much, he missed her over that intervening 2 years, and that's where his heart crumbles. So it's the grief, actually. In that sense, there's a slight WandaVision-esque type thing here in looking at it. And that's where it is. It's not necessarily that they were a couple and they were going out. This was her coming along for a dinner, and I guess them reliving, their old relationship to some extent. They've remained friends, I think that's more down to Christine understanding, Stephen in a sense, before the accident, even in the normal universe, is more in love with himself. And, there's the arrogance, bordering on narcissism, that he is the ultimate surgeon supreme, I guess, just to take from, one of the current, comic runs. But this is where he understands how much she meant to him, and that breaks his heart through the grief, ultimately.
Yeah.
I loved it that everyone was like, oh, what if she died? No. The what if is she said yes to going to the dinner. And that's even the better part of that. They don't even show that.
Yeah.
It just starts with essentially him picking her up. And this is the what if I wanted. Everyone has that premise. They did the quick show through. So there is a slight expectation to a degree. Hey, you've seen this before. So they are now into that part of it where there's an expectation. You've probably seen the films. If you haven't, you're fine. You're still going to get enjoyment out of these shows. But if you have seen these films to the level that you podcast about them, you are really going to find some of the choices in the writing and the choices in the story amazing.
Definitely.
Absolutely. What did you think of the crash, Chris? Because I know when myself and John watched the episode itself, we felt it had the same kind of impact that it had in the movie. That kind of moment of, that split second of, oh wow, the crash is about to happen right now. How do you think they carried it over into animation?
I liked it. Yeah. I liked the choice that it was. Now, to a degree, where it was his pure arrogance in the film that caused the crash. This wasn't the arrogance in him. It was a fatal mistake, because he corrects and he fixes it.
Yeah.
And then he gets taken out from behind.
Was anybody expecting that the Watcher was sitting in the car behind?
I know, exactly.
He's just watching you going,
I mean, the amazing thing is that car crash scene, the first one, I think it repeats just once more, maybe a couple of times. Yeah. I mean, it is almost, I think, frame for frame from the movie. I mean, it's spinning around on the road, crashing over the edge, hitting the roof, and going onto that fence and nose down into the water. Yeah. So,
it's
I mean,
visceral.
Yeah.
It's a visceral car crash.
It really
you can
is.
Hear it's that sports cars are not made for impact and safety, so they crunch. And the audio design on that crunch and that I was like, oh, every now and again you're watching a film and there's a crack of a bone, or there's like that punch and you hear the jaw. Yeah. It's that. I heard that and I was like, oh, that was a well designed.
Exactly.
Scene.
Yeah. And I mean, just I think from my perspective as well, watch this twice now. Mm-hmm. I have to say the first time, just because I didn't know where it was going, I was like going, this is really slow. I was thinking, how is this going? Because I think for all the previous three, they were contained around either full movies, or it was parts of movies leading to the point, like with the Avengers, that's Fury, getting the Avengers initiative together and going to each one, which is kind of just in part of the Avengers movie, just part of it almost. I mean, there's other different movies coming into it. So I was like, I just was kind of thinking, okay, where is this going to go? Are we suddenly going to get Caecilius? Is it going to be more? But it just takes this completely different turn. When it got to Dormammu and Strange Bargaining, I was kind of, that's really quick. But at the same time, I was thinking it was going quite slowly. And then watching it the second time, knowing what was coming up, it all just fitted really nicely for me.
Yeah.
I have to say it really improved it.
Yeah,
and I think that's just purely from expectation from the previous three so far, because it was a divergence from what happened, but they've all had divergence, but this is a real sharp left. A real sharp left.
Would you say they zigged when they would have zagged?
I would say they just went sharp left and kept going left to the point that they came back round from the right and went round again. And then just the scale, in the sense that this affected everything. Yeah. This affected, I guess, Ego, Thanos, Fury, Captain America, you name it. Anything going on in that universe, ultimately, didn't look too good by the end of it, did it?
All gone. Exactly. Yeah. All gone. I'd say they took a sharp left off a cliff and went into a river.
Into a fence, actually. Into a fence, technically. Don't
want to give any criticism to Doctor Strange by Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill. I think what they did there in establishing that solo movie for Doctor Strange was great. And I've watched it, I think we're close to about 50 times now, having seen that movie. But the one thing I always felt didn't work very well was the amount of time they spent on the relationship between Christine and Stephen. I always felt that you're supposed to feel they have a relationship there. You're supposed to feel that Doctor Strange does love Christine, but they kind of leave it as he can't write an email to her for 2 years while he's on in Kamar-Taj. That's kind of it. And then when they meet back up again, he's this sorcerer and she's all scared of all the powers that he has, but she's kind of left out and left in the background. This, I think, is the longest episode so far of What If. It's about 33 minutes rather than 27, if I remember right. I think that's just the extra amount that they spent with the two of them in the car in their actual relationship and getting to know the two of them and how they interacted together. I think that really helps this story. And it's fundamental to telling the story of Doctor Strange with a heart, effectively.
Yeah, definitely. And also just the fact that I going through all these different iterations of Strange turning back time with the Eye of Agamotto, with the Infinity Stone, and then simply, he lets her drive, or or he takes a different route, and each time in each scenario she dies. I mean, to the point where he doesn't show up to pick her up, and then I think her apartment burns down, and that's when you get the I guess the slight Doctor Who pointer with this absolute point in time that cannot be changed, or I think Doctor Who it's a fixed point in time.
Is, yeah.
So where it cannot be changed, and this is where then you get that really nice little moment with 2 years later with Wong coming to say, don't do anything strange or stupid, and
rash,
to or rash, yeah. And we have, initially, and that's the thing, it's hidden from us. We see him do that rash thing, which is using the Eye of Agamotto, but then the Ancient One effectively confronts him at the end of one of the car crashes, and we don't know it then. And that's the other thing. I liked all these little hidden nuggets all the way through, and then it gradually expands. So it wasn't even, it was even just that all the explanation got revealed later on after a whole series of things. So, we have the final crash. She tells him not to do this. He can't change the absolute point, and then fires the beam at him. And he, uses the Eye of Agamotto and survives it. But you think that's the story. And then it comes to the point where we see that actually at that moment she's split, Stephen into two alternates, one that accepts and one that doesn't accept Christine's death. And you have the nice little reference and touch point of, Stephen going to tea with Wong. Wong says, I'm going to put the kettle on. And in the other one, obviously we've already seen that. So it was nicely layered and structured, I thought, as well, how it unfolded, all the way through this.
Yeah. This was the M. Night Shyamalan What If. Mm-hmm. It had that twist enough at the end where you had this amazing, in my opinion, you had this amazing story up to a point, and then the reveal happens, and you're like, oh, and now we're into the final act, like thinking that the final act had just come, and you're like, oh wow, this is wow, okay, and that choice, that decision, made it so much more. I was going to say juicy, but from a narrative meal perspective, it's just so much more satisfying.
Yeah.
We'll get to the ending later because I have thoughts about it and I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
But just from that point, I just want to zero in, if you mind. I want to zero in on the choice of the power, because that is just fantastic. Because it was just like, by the way, that. Again, we had the tentacle monstered.
Yeah.
So is it, or do you think we are now getting a reoccurring early look at Shuma-Gorath? Is this because now we've seen him twice already?
Yeah.
And
it would have been really helpful. Doctor Strange doesn't do spells like we see in Harry Potter or anything like that. But if he did, he would be shouting out the name of all of these creatures that he takes down.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because these are artists, these are people that are being tasked with drawing whatever it is that they're being told to draw, or getting their style in there. You can't be sure, because Shuma-Gorath doesn't technically look like this in the comics, and we don't see the
many-angled one.
Yeah, we don't see the head of this creature. We see just the tentacles popping out here. So there's loads of possibilities as to who it is. It could absolutely be Shuma-Gorath, and I know people are running with that as the idea, especially because it's in here in Doctor Strange.
Exactly.
It has been in another.
It would make, I guess, more sense because of the association now that is being in this, for sure. But I guess until you see the main body of this tentacled creature, we're not going to know. That it could be a kraken, it could be a whole range of different tentacled beings. I mean, even, just because the tentacle being in the first episode was related to Hydra, we know that equally there's tentacled mythology and creatures associated there.
There's Leviathan and Hydrus.
Yeah. So it's definitely, though, being here, it could be. Yeah. It's most likely the same one. Maybe this is the source of all this energy. If that, if Strange believes, and if the book of Cagliostro says that it's the consumption of the power from this creature primarily that it can help break the absolute point.
I think he's building up through powerful beings, but Obeng does say that this is a powerful creature, which we didn't really know from the first episode.
And Shuma-Gorath is, for sure. So I think so.
Yeah, but on the rest of the whole scene, Chris, all of the other creatures that are coming out, I think this is the best use of animation that we've seen.
So good. So good. Like the choice, like the design of most of the creatures is fantastic. Then the choice of the melding and the taking of the powers, where you see sometimes the tentacles and the wings and the scales form part of actual, not just, it becomes part of Strange to a degree, which is, and then sometimes the choice to use the shadow just to depict that. Fantastic. I want the hats off about the leprechaun, or the gnome. I think it's a leprechaun. I'm sticking to it's a leprechaun because that kind of puts leprechauns in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I was going to make the joke about that, but there was a really, really good piece of feedback that we got. I'll give a shout out to Donald Dennis for this over on our Facebook group, where he said it is more of a gnome, and it's actually a reference to the show Troll Hunters, which has a gnome in it. And Troll Hunters was the show where the showrunner, for this show, the head writer for this show started out, AC Bradley, started out working over there. So when he said that, I was going, you know what? Unfortunately, it probably isn't a leprechaun.
That's it. Yeah.
So
I still like the fact it could be a garden gnome. Who would have thought all those gnomes dotted around different people's gardens across the world are, full of life. Either
and
that
evil.
and evil. Or either that or Doctor Strange in that sense only got the power to fish or wear wellies or to stand really, really still for a long time.
Have a pointy hat without starch.
there you go.
Have a red pointy hat without starch.
Exactly.
All magic.
It's the Travelocity gnome or something. I don't know.
This overall scene was just, I just thought it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Just the choice of how they did, what they did, and just the constant consumption. And more, the toll it takes on Strange through. You see the transformation in, he becomes more goth. He shadowed, the hollow look in his face, the more angular, he changes his beard's appearance to become more pointy.
Yes, the pointy goatee, the Star Trek symbol of the evil one.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I'm totally with you. This was some of my favorite stuff. I mean, Strange, I would say, along with, like Blade and all, it really lends itself to a horror aesthetic. And I mean, they did that so well here, as you say, like the shadows. I mean, it really reminded me of Nosferatu, the shadow.
Yeah.
But just seeing all the different forms that he had absorbed, all the different creatures and the forms of them appearing when the two strangers first meet, just coming out of the shadow. And as you say, like when he finally takes that tentacled creature, his fingers turning into tentacles and so on, and getting the stag's antlers and the bat wings. As I say, maybe this is Doctor Strange finally consuming the Batman, and maybe this is Marvel.
He becomes Man-Bat.
Yeah, well, that's it. Maybe this is Marvel asserting supremacy over DC here by taking out Man-Bat or Batman.
Perhaps that's it. There is one weird moment about the episode, though. He has consumed all of this power. He's gotten the ability to get Christine back. He gets her back and doesn't change his shape back from this awful monster when he stares into Christine's face and goes, "It's me, Stephen."
Yeah, that is
Does she
true.
get terrified to death and have
think
a heart
so.
attack?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think so, but I guess it's because of the energy that he's having to use to break this absolute point in time.
He literally brings her back and he's still using the powers.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it's all of them combined, because, he's not going through the whole kind of mystical telephone book, to take everyone. I mean, he draws a line at bugs.
That's true.
He doesn't take the magical beetle, but he does take his cloak, which was really cool. I love the cloak battle as well. I love how they've made the cloak so central.
It's a character unto itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the cloak of levitation, I think in Doctor Strange, we were saying that it was very similar to Aladdin's carpet from the animated Disney movie.
Yeah.
That was the characterization for something that doesn't talk at all, but is there to protect its owner, effectively. And now they have the attack of the two, of the two Doctor Stranges, the battle between, Doctor Strange Supreme and our Doctor Strange, I suppose, or the one that got on with his life. We also get a cloak battle in this episode. One of my favorite tweets that I saw this week was, Marvel, you've gone too far and just the gif of the cloak being ripped apart.
I know.
Lots of crying emojis.
R.I.P. Cloak of Levitation.
Cloak of Levitation, yes.
I just love the fact that, because in the comic books, correct me if I'm wrong, the cloak does not have that much of a character, does it? No, it's not. It's just, it's a tool like the Eye of Agamotto.
Yeah, exactly.
It allows him to levitate, basically, but there's nothing to suggest that, he would wipe the tear away from the eye of Doctor Strange or sort of try and heal his, a little,
face.
exactly, or give him a
like,
massage.
there.
And Sony doesn't normally, I float off his back to effectively bind his enemy, or to even attack his enemy, like they did in the movies. So,
And in this one.
and in this one as well. But I think it was just as well that battle. And the cloak battle was part of it, but the battle between the two strangers as well was just great. I loved how got the war runes put on him, with Agamotto, and that's protecting him. And I like the fact that it's evil Doctor Strange has to consume himself as well, ultimately, because of being split in two by the Ancient One. And actually the whole consumption with the mouth open, it reminded me, I can't remember the horror movie, almost a bit like a Death Eater, say, from Harry Potter, how it's taking out the energy, and sucking it out. But also whether it was, the movie with Donald Sutherland, but they're just sort of pointing and screeching. Body snatchers. Yeah. But I loved how, I loved that it was that physical absorption, not only of the energy, but also of that body, which is, I think when we first watched it, I was saying, this looks very much like, Mordo in the post-credit scene of the movie when he takes the magical energy back from, the other guy who, helped his, recovered from the spinal injury. Yeah. I can't remember the guy's name now, but that is, it felt like a similar kind of thing, in that sense, but obviously he didn't kind of do a body snatcher look.
No more magicians.
Yeah.
Exactly. Too many magicians. Yes. Yeah.
But the battle overall I thought was great. The fighting, the swirling round and shooting of the different magical energy at one another. And just then as these runes kind of gradually being pummeled off the face, from Doctor Strange, that just means he can't resist the power that has, Strange Supreme has kind of built up with this smorgasbord of magical energy that he's been scoffing down.
What a great visual clue for people that, maybe don't understand exactly how the magic works. The idea of seeing the kind of bright runes on his face, and as he's being hit or with a spell, or as he's being punched, one of them drops off or 5 of them come off. I think that's such a great choice by the animators to show how powerful this battle is that's going on. He's taking
chunks off the health bar, like in a video game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought this was this was the most cinematic battle we have got on this show. And against all the other ones we've got. It is also probably the most cinematic sorcerer battle we've got. I'm taking the first film into account.
Maybe, yeah.
And just because it was the most, in the other ones we've had them kind of warp the world around them and stuff. Here we started getting the bands of Thatterak kind of as input in, we got the whispers of kind of thin treadmills. We got proper blasts. We got whereas previously, say with the Ancient One, you get the fan and the kind of just push of energy.
Yeah.
This was literally spell slinging level of kind of stuff. And I was like, this is my expectation to a degree for Doctor Strange 2. They have kind of upped the ante on themselves. They just went,
definitely.
Oh no, this is what we could do. But the problem is, this is animated.
Yeah.
Trying to do this level of stuff as well in a realistic MCU is gonna be difficult.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely.
You have 11 months, CGI guys.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I think that I think they'll play more in the Dimension playbook of where they are and how they do it. I mean, I do too, because the first movie was very much bringing this in. I think Kevin Feige said at the time this was introducing the magical area, and so that they flitted into that, on Earth, but this is where only right at the end with going to the Dark Dimension. And I remember from the trailer that great scene with his shields up battling, the power blasts coming from Dormammu. But it was really short, I was I thought this was going to be really much more epic. And then when it happened in the movie, I was like, oh, this is really, really short. But I mean, that is straight out of, the comics as well. So I think, this is really, as you say, Chris, I think definitely, this kind of, I guess, puts a little bit of a benchmark as to where it's probably going in Multiverse of Madness to some extent. Yeah. And even with the horror, I mean, you think we've got Sam Raimi, directing Multiverse of Madness. So even just that kind of darker edge to it. I mean, because this was a dark movie as well. Yeah. And this really, it really had that sense of foreboding, tense, dark, almost, it was almost desperate in terms of what he was doing and how he was going about it. So, I like that. I mean, it's good mixing it up, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I know this was only 33 minutes, but I would have watched a full 90 minutes of this.
Yeah.
One. Yeah. Like, and like, that's the first time I'm saying that now. Like, Captain Carter was close. Just because I like that pre kind of during World War II universe that they set up in the first Avenger, and I like that storyline, and I like the Captain Carter universe of that storyline, especially with the Iron Avenger. Yeah. Sorry, the Hydra Stomper, excuse me.
There you go.
I liked all of that.
Yeah. But I could see a second episode of that. Like, I can see another episode of that. I'm not sure whether, and I think you probably just flesh out the story more if you had an hour of the Peggy Carter episode. But coming back to another episode of Captain Carter, that's just as good for me. I'll probably see that.
Oh,
again. With this, I do think it felt epic and it felt longer than it was. It felt massive. And yes, absolutely, I could spend another hour sitting down watching that. It was really, really good. Two great other choices that I thought from the episode that I really, really liked. I loved the melting of everybody in the universe that Doctor Strange sees. Yeah. Even Wong, when Wong is trying to put the protection on him and Wong is starting to disappear and starting to fade. I love that kind of dragging of smoke effect that they were doing on all the bodies and everything in the universe. I thought that was really, really cool as choice. Yeah. And then probably the big one, which is, as we've seen throughout the episodes, and you mentioned it, John, as we've seen throughout the episodes, the Watcher's becoming more and more present in all of these stories. We see him in the opening of this episode in the city of New York as Strange comes to pick up Christine. He's right at the start there. He's in the universe watching on. And by the end of this, in fact, halfway through the episode, we see Strange Supreme can hear him. He hears the voice of the Watcher in the background. And then by the end of the episode, he's able to communicate to him because they're the last two things left in this universe. Yeah.
That was
what a great choice.
That was really good. It was in the library of Cagliostro, and you just have this narrative coming in from the Watcher saying, I could have stopped it now, but I don't interfere. Literally, I bet he wish he had done by the end of it, but not, and you just get that great moment of, Strange turning around and going, who's there? Really nice. The other one as well is, it's with the good Doctor Strange, and there's the silhouette, and it's his silhouette. And then it looks like it becomes the Watcher's, but ultimately then it's where evil Doctor Strange pulls him through into the shadow. So it's like that was really, really good. And then, as you say, then they're having, this full on conversation by the end, because it's only those two left, and, Doctor Strange begging the Watcher to intervene to undo everything that he's done. And even then he refuses. So, I mean, he really is sits on the fence. I mean, I thought Doctor Strange was bad in Civil War, basically meditating throughout the whole of Marvel, Civil War. Well, I mean, the Watcher's probably the next level of indecision or neutrality, whatever it might be, I guess.
It's an interesting premise, isn't it? Because the Watcher is seeing multiple multiverses, effectively. He's seeing universes die and be born all the time. That is his role, seeing everything. And he's just looking in on this story and seeing how it plays out, knowing it will end with the end of the universe.
Yeah, it's a different perspective in terms of the scale.
So he doesn't have to save every universe, because loads of the pieces of the multiverse will die. They will end. So he doesn't have to save everyone, but I love his line to Strange, you more than anyone else must understand meddling with time and events only leads to more destruction, as the universe is destroying around Doctor Strange. I just think that's a real diss to Strange. It's like, you did it. You messed it all up. I'm not going to mess anything else up later.
You were
End
warned
of
by
universe.
the Ancient One as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's all the way through there. And I think, it was really good. I really liked seeing Cagliostro as well, because that was so central, you know, the Book of Cagliostro in the original cinematic Doctor Strange, and coming to the Lost Library with Obeng, who I love that he goes to the library and he meets with Obeng, who, and you know, I think is another name for Cagliostro in the comics.
I have to look that up. Yeah, that is another name that Cagliostro used. It's something to do with Cagliostro has found a way to live for a really long time, so he just takes on other names so that people don't know that he's the same person effectively. But I thought that was also a really interesting touch. The Sorcerer Supreme, or Doctor Strange Supreme, absorbing all of these creatures, and when he comes out from doing all of the absorbing, we see that 100 years have passed, that he's kept himself young while absorbing them, and Cagliostro, or Obeng, has now passed on, or he's about to die effectively. That was really interesting as well, because you know, you think it could be, you know, especially in a half-hour episode, you think this has lasted, maybe a couple of days, but he spent almost a century or maybe more in there, because Cagliostro lives longer than most people. He has that ability, but not said on screen here. But that's the assumption you hear from him, from Obeng, that he is now passed on. It's his time.
And I guess
that is inevitable.
Yeah, and I guess that time is moving differently, because obviously the good Doctor Strange, if 100 years had passed actually in his timeline, so his timeline is going at a relatively different speed, I guess.
It is, yeah. Well,
or Evil Strange is slowing it down. But the thing is, that doesn't explain Obeng, who has aged in that time. But maybe it's just around him.
His first words to Doctor Strange when he pulls him through is, you don't need to, the question isn't where are you, the question is when are you? So he's pulling him forward to his time, I think. Yeah. Remember, this is all about the time. You know, this entire episode really is about time travel, in a lot of senses. It is about using the Eye of Agamotto to move back and forth through time. So he has mastered that ability effectively.
Yeah.
Which is one of the other things that has changed with Doctor Strange not using his hands. There's a really quick snippet of him, training in Kamar-Taj, but it seems like because he doesn't have the uphill battle that he had to overcome dealing with the loss of his hands, it feels like he's able to capture the power more easily, I suppose. Yeah. In here, he's very much referenced as he is the Sorcerer Supreme, which is a title he never earned in the Doctor Strange movie. He's still Doctor Strange, a sorcerer by the end of that movie, whereas here he's referred to as
he becomes Sorcerer Supreme in with that change having taken place.
Yeah,
definitely.
So I guess that's because he doesn't have to overcome that issue with his hands, where he's looking at his hands going, well, I can't possibly do any of this stuff, and he doesn't have that moment in these very quick scenes. You see him very instantly getting the sling ring, very instantly getting that ability to be able to move through to different places, right? Whereas in the movie, that was a big stumbling block for him.
Yeah, exactly. But I think let's get on to our third point. What if the universe was changed forever? What would be so different? Well, I guess it doesn't exist anymore. It's just Doctor Strange, on his own
in that crystal.
I guess that was the mirror. That's the thing. I assume that was the mirror dimension that he had put around, so that effectively he can survive, I guess, from the destruction of the universe, of the reality because the mirror dimension produced new realities so that you could practice your magic in the real world or on Earth.
Yeah.
And so he is effectively creating a separate reality from the death of
his universe.
From his universe, but it's not enough to save Christine, because she is still sort of fading and disintegrating away. And actually, I think the Watcher is on the outside of that mirror dimension. So, and he's just having this conversation, but it's just this small little speck, I guess, of a dead universe with a single point of existence, which is Doctor Strange.
So what if this evil Doctor Strange learns how to travel the multiverse?
Well, exactly. Or He'll never learn how to pull a rabbit out of a top hat.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't
He's just stuck there.
Don't touch magic, otherwise you have the potential to destroy the fabric of reality.
Yeah.
No card tricks, anyone. No sort of ping pong.
Burn them
ball.
at the stake. They're all witchers and
No
wizards.
ping pong balls under cups. Switcheroo. None of that. Otherwise, the universe effectively ends. Really.
Yeah, so there were 9 episodes this season. Yes, we have a season 2, but we've 9 episodes this season, and we're on episode 4, and we're seeing more and more interaction with the Watcher in the universes, or the multiverses. In the comic books, not giving too much away, I don't think the Watcher doesn't always just watch.
Yeah.
And it's a well-known. He sometimes meddles. I get the feeling with the ending of this episode, and with some of them kind of continue the place they leave a lot of these. I get the feeling that some of there will be continuations. Particularly, I see Peggy and Doctor Strange. That those are the 2 central characters, and T'Challa coming back. I can see the Watcher going back and taking Nick Fury, taking Star-Lord, kind of T'Challa, taking Captain Carter, and then having to probably either stop or take this Doctor Strange. This Doctor Strange will be taken as well, or it will be to stop this Doctor Strange, who is now escaped from the dead universe he killed.
Right.
Yeah.
To go on to a different universe and to absorb that power to try and bring back not just his dead love, but his dead universe.
See, I feel like this Doctor Strange has learned his lesson by the end, and he's in a prison of his own creation, is the way I think that last moment
I
played.
think there's an awful lot of hubris.
So I'm not sure whether we'll see him being an evil Doctor Strange in another story. I think if he does escape this portion, I think that story's done. I think he's realized, I tried everything, couldn't bring her back. It's a fixed point in time.
Okay.
Maybe he'll travel to another universe to see a different Christine, potentially, in a different universe. So I'm not too sure whether he becomes the antagonist in a future story, but you are right. It's a really good point to make that he is in that little dot at the end of the episode, so we don't see it blink out and disappear.
Yeah.
So.
And I wondered, we see when he absorbs the creatures, he takes on their powers and their forms. So absorbing his other half takes on his powers, but is there an element, because it's him, it's actually him split in 2. And this half is accepting. It becomes, the devil and the angel on the side, so that, with what's happened, with the fact that Christine hasn't survived any of this, despite what the Dark Doctor Strange was doing. Not only is that pure hubris for him and that realization, but there's also then this other half of him that has, was split, effectively accepted it, and has come back in. So I wonder if there's that play in there as well that leads him to this point where
fair.
I think, and I would agree, that he realized the scale of the, dare I say, the breakage he's done. This is kind of like a universal bull in a china shop. He's literally smashed everything.
Yes, but I will say, Chris, I 100% agree. The show is, I think it's definitely building up to the Watcher interfering. That's absolutely what the show is building up to. It's had him very much in the background of the first episode, kind of watching on with the love story. Second episode, you see him in the background a little bit. Third episode, much more. And this episode, he's able to be heard and have a conversation with someone in the universe. So yes, absolutely. I think there will be an episode during this first 9 episode run where he interferes in some way.
Or it could be the 9th episode leading into the season 2.
Potentially. There has been a lot of speculation this week that because the trailer for the new Spider-Man movie was released with Doctor Strange in there, that's potentially the one from What If. I'm not too sure about that.
I don't think so.
It seems like it's connected just purely because the 2 things happened in the same week. The one I do like is that we do have a dragon that's absorbed by Doctor Strange in here. and Shang-Chi was released this week in the cinema, which does feature a dragon in the movie. I'm reliably informed from the trailer. So I wonder if that was a little reference because the two of them coming out the same week. It seems more likely than them releasing the Doctor Strange episode in the week that Sony released their trailer for their movie, to me. But
yeah. I think there was definitely, it was all timed. The machine that is Disney, it's just, they plan all this and it's just like, hey, we want this little thing to go with this little thing. So let's line all the cards up and they fall where I want them or where the big mouse wants them. Doctor Strange and all the fun and games, and we could do another hour alone just on the Spider-Man trailer. I'm not saying we will, fellow defenders.
we will.
Because I've gone down many rabbit holes and I'm like, no, this is it. I'm waiting until the film. This is my sacred space.
Yes, and we've also learned many times from doing trailer breakdowns when we used to do them that we're completely terrible at it. So we don't want to either spoil the movie for you by speculating about things that will not happen, or ruin the movie for ourselves by building up our expectations incorrectly. John, have we talked enough about Doctor Strange for this episode? Do you have any notes that you want to talk about from the episode?
Obviously not, but I think for the notes, I know just some initial feedback. I think I was tasked with, what are these creatures? Are there any references to, to the comics? And I mean, I have to say, Sean McGrath absolutely could be that tentacle. It could be another 2, or 3 things, whether it's related to Hydra or even just mythical beasts. Mm-hmm. I think, the only other one I could really kind of pull out was some Akhet, Lord of the Old Ones, which I believe is is an antagonist of Namor, but that was kind of like the winged beast with the sort of white piercing eyes, because it looked like him from what I remember from the comics, rather than that was for a fact. Obviously, we all know a garden gnome when we see one, or dare I say it, a leprechaun. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of these were from things like Celtic and Norse mythology. Like, I think the stag is probably, I have no idea how to pronounce it, but that would all link into kind of Asgardian-like creatures as well. From Norse mythology.
Like Fjornir, I think is the pronunciation of the word that you've got written there.
Exactly. I can't pronounce that. Too many consonants together.
I've been playing a lot of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, so.
And I think, there was certainly, like a snake-like creature, like a basilisk, but that could possibly be Hydrus, in terms of cut off one arm, several will, or cut off one head and several heads will pop back into place, as they do, those, Hydra people. Mm-hmm. And then, as you said, there's the dragon. And I mean, there's a number of dragons, in Marvel. You've got Shao-Lao from the Iron Fist, where he gets his power from. And then, as Derek mentioned about Shang-Chi and the Great Protector, the dragon from Shang-Chi, the movie, it could be that. There's also then the Makluans from Fin Fang Foom, as well, which are more kind of reptilian, but kind of dragon, so it could be, any one of those. There's, the bat-like creature. There's loads of possibilities. Yeah.
It's mad, isn't it? As we said before, with live action movies, all of these creatures would be detailed in the credits at the end, but because it's a voice cast usually that you get there, it's only a speaking character that gets named, or gets a name at the end of the credits, and they don't give any details about who designed what creatures, So I wish they did. It would be great, cause then we would be definite about this, but there's possibilities, I think, for all of those creatures that could have been from Marvel Comics or from other sources as well.
That's why I think the Asgardian side of things, certainly with the stag and things like the basilisk or Greek or Roman,
Do you think we're going to get an assembled at the end of this season?
I'd really hope so. Really hope so.
Based on what they've done, oh my God, I hope so, because this is what I want. And then a breakdown. They won't do it by episode, but at least At least, like, that would be the perfect bit.
We've been slightly critical of the Assembled so far because they've been a little bit like press kits rather than something really deep and meaty. But I'd hope, given that Disney predominantly was an animation company, that they'd understand how to do something for animation. And I know I've already seen some videos from Sebastian Stan on his Instagram of him doing his recording session for What If, for the first episode of What If. So potentially there's loads of that kind of footage out there where we'll have all the actors sharing their voices. So hopefully we will get an Assembled after the 9th episode of this season. I have one note for this episode because when I saw the name pop up at the credits, I was really surprised. Leslie Bibb returning for a really brief cameo as Christine Everard. That was a character that was in Iron Man 1 or 2. You would remember her. She's the one that she was a journalist who was questioning Tony Stark and appeared in both of those movies. And in here, she reprises the role as Christine Everard.
Excellent.
Announcing the explosion of the apartment block, the one that killed Dr. Palmer while we have Doctor Strange in the bar. That is some level of cameo to have for a character that appeared
it's really good.
in 2 major Iron Man movies. Yeah. Why bring her back? What a cool idea to bring her back for this scene that is definitely recorded for this movie. It's not reused footage from anything else. That's so cool.
Exactly. It's really, really good. And fair dues. I think from my side, because I mean, I didn't even clock it. So that's how good she was, because she felt like a newsreader, and really good. The only final note I've got is around, there's just little reference in Cagliostro's library to Caecilius's Doctor Strange and the name joke. And I guess one of the running themes, that we saw in, Infinity War, and I think even in, the latest Spider-Man trailer as well. So here, he is known by, Cagliostro or Oben, as Dr. Armani, which is quite cool. Just that.
And he says, it's strange, no weirder than any of the other sorcerer names that I've heard. So a nice little play on the joke from Caecilius from the Doctor Strange movie. Really cool. I think that's it for the episode, unless anybody has anything else to throw in there.
No, I'm dying to know whether John defends this episode. It's good. I know it's borderline. It's going to be a tough one. John,
in some universe somewhere of the multiverse, I won't defend this episode, strangely.
There is a John who
but in this one,
awesome.
fellow defenders, in this one, I absolutely do defend this episode of What If. I'd give it 5 Dr. Armanis out of 5. And mainly, to be honest, I think it's just that I think they took this in a direction that I absolutely loved. I mean, this is one of my favorite, if not, this is my favorite character, so I'm going to be slightly biased. But I think that this also ramped up the scale of what If can do. That actually goes beyond the stories in the movies and takes you into, and explores avenues that go beyond what the movies do. And just simply here, I guess, with Doctor Strange, you can split the main character into 2 in a universe, and you are dealing with powers that, however made up they sound, can ultimately lead to the destruction of reality. And so they take it to the extremes. They really expand the scale. They make it epic. I loved it. I loved the battle of the 2 strangers. I loved him absorbing the different mystical creatures. The cloak battle, what's not to love, with that. And I think, I just thought this was really, really epic. Dark, slightly horror-esque. I love that, the actions of Doctor Strange was based around grief, but it was ultimately hopeless, whatever he did. He couldn't change the timeline. He couldn't bring back Christine, even going to this extreme event. The hubris is that he lost her again, and killed off everything, known in that universe, other than himself, left alone. And dare I say it, I mean, the Watcher really has kahunas to, sit on the fence like Humpty Dumpty, after that one. So fair
He's
dues.
not a god. He's a watcher.
Well, I know he does.
Yeah.
He's like a bird watcher. He just sits and looks through his binoculars.
Binoculars.
I guess, he's a twitcher, isn't it? A twitcher.
We said before about Dr. Manhattan in The Watchmen that his power is that he's omniscient but not omnipotent, which means he can watch everything, but he can't do anything about it because it's there, it's happening.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same power, really, that the Watcher has.
That's true.
He doesn't interfere because he's not a god, and that's what Doctor Strange thinks he is.
Yeah.
He says to him, you are a god, do something about it.
Well, he would be a great train spotter. So yeah, definitely defend this. 5 Dr. Armanis out of 5. Chris, do you defend episode 4 of What If?
I 100%, 1,000% defend this episode. This, for me, is the epitome of the what if capabilities of animation and them being a show. It's going beyond the known stories. Now, you can argue the Star-Lord T'Challa episode goes beyond. It doesn't really, because it is based solely on like almost 2 episodes, 2 films. This starts at shows the film and then just blows past it.
Yeah.
And this, for me, is what you can do when you accept that everyone should know this, should know the ins and outs, but you just give them a 3-minute, 4-minute refresher course and then just go deep. And it's just fun. The animation's beautiful. It's dark. It's scary in points, and really just sets up the you don't need the Disney princess ending. You don't need that beautiful, happy-go-lucky ending. They killed the universe and left a man in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just, it ends on a complete bummer. With, on top of that, an M. Night Shyamalan twist, where most people did not see it coming. Like, I didn't. Like, I was not expecting this part. The 2 strangers. So, absolutely defend. Best episode to date. Derek, do you defend this episode? Shock us and say no.
This was terrible. This is the worst episode of the show so far. No, genuinely, yes, best episode of the show so far, because exactly what you said, Chris. The idea is that you're now got What If on TV. This isn't just let's rewatch the movies that we've seen before, in animated before. They really took the premise really far. They did some fantastic moments of animation in this episode. And I'm really intrigued because we still have 5 more episodes of this show to go. Where are they going to go with it? What's the next thing that's going to be massively changed in this universe? What's going to happen in episode 5? I have no idea what's coming up for the rest of the season. Well, I have one. I know there's one more episode that we know is coming with Killmonger. So that's going to be an interesting one.
I know the Spider-Man one.
Yeah, and of course,
there's one more with Spider-Man. There's a Spider-Man and a Killmonger. There's 2.
Yeah.
And we've got 5 left.
Exactly. So be really intrigued to see what comes. But this was fantastic. Again, probably the movie I've watched most because it's the movie that John has watched most. So probably one of the movies that I've watched most is Doctor Strange. So I love the little piece of that's put in at the beginning of the episode, going, all that still happened. He was still a massively powerful sorcerer. He still defeated Dormammu in the same way. But then he started to kind of lose himself in the loss. And I think by focusing it on the relationship of Christine and Stephen, which was kind of lacking in the Doctor Strange movie, I think it added something really interesting.
Yeah, it really did, actually. Yeah,
it was intriguing watching it because we thought we had no idea what the reaction of other people would be to this episode, but it is the highest rated so far. Our feedback in general is massively positive for this episode. So people were really willing to go with an episode that was doing something really
different.
On
for the ride. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Speaking of going for a ride, let's hop in the car and go down the local boozer.
Absolutely.
To pub quiz time.
We were able to do that while we were on holiday.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know.
Actually go into pubs without booking or anything like that. Just go in for a beer. It was amazing.
Yeah, sit outside. Lovely weather. It was great. Yeah. But I think we all need a stiff drink after what Doctor Strange did to that universe. And so, fellow defenders, fellow quizzers, here is the pub quiz for episode 4. From what creature or animal did the misguided Doctor Strange Supreme get his cloak?
That'll be interesting. You don't need the personal name, the thing that his friend
No, just
calls
the
friend.
general animal or creature name,
Okay.
because,
George.
you know, if you know that it's a direct reference from the comic, then you are a better person than I am, and in which case, you add that in, and you'll get a surprise.
You might get a bonus
Oh,
point.
bonus point,
A
yeah.
bonus point. John, do you want to get the question one more time?
Definitely. So this week's pub quiz question from episode 4. From what creature or animal did the misguided Doctor Strange Supreme get his cloak?
Excellent. You can send all your answers into feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com. By the end of the season, we will announce the winner of our What If pub quiz, who will be getting some What If Funko Pops at the end of the season. So some really good ones there. Go check them out.
They look amazing.
Yeah.
Really cool. They look really cool.
Great stuff.
John, I know you are going to have to stay in the pub here while myself and Chris continue on with the feedback for
Yeah,
our previous episodes.
I really wish I was here for the feedback, because there's tons of it and it looks really, really fab. But fellow defenders, I do have to go and tend to my 84-year-old mother. I have been probably away a bit too longer than normal. But yeah, enjoy the feedback, fellow defenders and guys, Derek and Chris.
Without a doubt.
It looks really good. And thanks so much for the feedback. It's great getting it all in, and I'm really glad everyone's enjoyed it. If there's anything directed specifically to me, please let me know,
I will, of course.
so that I can then obviously come back to you on that.
In the meantime, I'll answer it on your behalf.
Yeah.
And by the way, fellow defenders, when he says take care of his 84-year-old mother, he means get her a gin and tonic.
Yeah,
and some
basically.
lunch.
Yeah, that's exactly what I need to do. She has been relaxing in the garden, in the sun, which we're lucky to have today.
Right.
So, yeah, thanks so much, fellow defenders. And remember, keep watching, keep listening, keep defending. Bye.
See, people are going to turn off now, thinking that's the end of the
Don't
episode.
go, don't go.
No, they won't. They know I'm just doing it.
Right.
This is a pre-goodbye from me, John.
Right. Thanks, John.
Bye.
So with him gone, we can really tell the truth. Let's go to feedback. This is a terrible episode. Ah!
Worst episode ever. Chris, cast your mind back. We're going into our feedback section. Cast your mind back. This is a timey-wimey episode of What If. Let's go all the way back to the first couple of episodes of the show. We've got some feedback in. First up from Shamiz, who says, hello there, everyone. This is Shamiz from Savannah, Georgia. I'm a binger, so I often wait until I've watched the whole show before listening to your podcast, so don't send in feedback. But since the format of the show is different, I've been watching them week to week. For episode 1, the Hydra Cthulhu monster actually made sense to me. In the first Captain America movies, wasn't it Zola that designed the weapons? And because of Captain Carter, Red Skull no longer had Zola to create tech for him. Red Skull is supposed to be super into the mythology anyway, so I suppose left to his own devices, he took the fantasy route instead of the sci-fi route. That's a really good point, Shamiz.
Yeah.
Isn't it? What a great catch. I like that.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes, Zola was the tech behind.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, I really wish we had got like full on comic book Zola.
Well, yes.
Like brain in the stomach Zola kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, we did have Toby Jones coming back for that. You never know. That could be a what if episode later on in the series. Shamiz continues on episode 2. She said it was perfect. I teared up at the end when they splashed the dedication to Chadwick Boseman on the screen. Happy TV watching from Shamiz.
100%. We all did. Good to know, though, he apparently has a few more episodes in this or the next season. So this is not his 100% end. We will still get more of Chadwick.
Yes, 3 more episodes confirmed for this season. Yeah, so we will get a bit more of Chadwick Boseman later on. Thanks so much, Shamiz. We also got an email in from Victor who says, hail Derek, John, Chris and fellow defenders. I love the series so far. The animation and music are fab and I cannot get enough of Haley Atwell and Chadwick Boseman. This episode's cast is also full of my favourite actors, especially Chadwick Boseman, Michael Rooker and Benicio del Toro. I am fascinated with the endless possibility the series teases. We could spend hours at the pub discussing them and still not touch on everything. Some questions from the episode. Will the embers of Genesis, Nebula fed to the Big Ugly, destroy Drax's planet after all? Or will it just become a galactic farm? This Nebula is a beauty. Our Thanos surely was mad to mess with those looks. I don't recall the Collector being so physically imposing in the movies. Might we see more Elders of the Universe in future episodes? Same as John, though, I'm not a fan of Howard the Duck, but Zach Green makes him palatable. The dedication to Chadwick Boseman was especially touching to me. We are fellow alumni of Howard University. As always, I look forward to your podcasts and Defenders feedback. Enjoy your holiday. Excelsior, Victor Von Doom. P.S. John, did you notice recently in the comics our favourite Monarch villain is to be wed? Where's our invitations? Says Victor. Of course, there was going to be a question for John, straight up. Thanks, Victor. He has seen the comics. He has seen that Doctor Doom is about to be wed in the comic books. Yeah, it's a long way to get over to Latveria, where he lives. So maybe he was just saving the travel costs.
Well, it's also traveling during a pandemic.
True.
Like you've got all the extra precautions, and if you don't have a fantastic car of your own or a Quinjet, it's just not doable in today's modern era.
Exactly. Thanks, Victor.
Thanks, Victor. Now, let's get on to some feedback for episode 3. We'll start off with audio message from the one, the only, Matt Murdoch, our friend, and he's going to talk about music in that episode.
Hey guys, Matt from across the pond here. Wanted to talk about this little motif, a little snippet of music that played during each of the deaths during this third episode of What If. And I loved the kind of whodunit aspect of it. But those motifs of the deaths, because they were shocking, I guess because I haven't seen Cartman's score for this yet on Spotify or any titles or anything, I'm just going to call it the shock death motif. It was the same piece that was played during all of the deaths of the Avengers, or in the case of Hawkeye, I guess it was when he was found after they found out that he wasn't sleeping, that he was dead. Anyway, it's really a classic piece of horror writing. It can be traced all the way back to Alfred Hitchcock films, and that is you take two notes that don't fit together and you repeat them over and over and over again. In Cartman's case here, it's two keys, a running line in two different keys that she played at the same time that creates that tension, and they never really resolve. And what happens with us as humans is when things don't resolve, what's just uncomfortable suddenly becomes horrifying. And that's a wonderful aspect of this particular piece of music. I'm going to play it for you. It's kind of just an approximation because it's done with a whole orchestra naturally, and I'm just doing this on the piano. So it won't be exactly the same. And I apologize in advance for how uncomfortable this is going to make you feel. Yeah, it gives you the heebie-jeebies, right? The top line is in this key, whereas the bottom line is in this key. So what that does, since they don't ever fit together in any particular way, and they don't ever really resolve to something that does fit with both of them, we're horrified by it. And if you think to the score of Psycho, that's exactly what that composer did. He took two pitches and he just never resolved them. You got this. And all Cartman has done is she flipped what we call the inversion. Rather than being right next to each other, she sets them not quite an octave apart. But that is what makes it so tense. Crazy how pitches that are so close together can create so much conflict within our souls to the point where we're horrified by it. And let's face it, seeing an Avenger dying is horrifying to us, right? So a great aspect of that. There was one other thing that she did with this, though, that a lot of horror film writers are doing now. They're not just making the tension in the harmony, but they're also making the tension in the rhythm. It feels like that one part is playing faster than the other. Both can be correlated into time, but they don't seem to fit. Like it takes 2 times for one of them to pass and 3 times for the other of them to pass for them to meet up again. And that creates a whole lot of tension as well. That's all I've got, but I really did love this third episode. I thought it was fantastic. Take care.
Matt, thank you so much once again for your feedback. I love your thoughts about the music from the episode, bits that I just wouldn't pick up. But you've said it before yourself, these elements of using notes to put people off edge are things you're not supposed to notice, as things you're supposed to just pick up as you watch the episode. So I'm so glad you picked them up for us.
Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, that noise, I'm not even going to call it music. That noise you created was chilling to the bone.
Excellent. Chris, do you want to take us on next email?
Yes, first up we have email from Jerry. Again, this is all on episode 3. He went, "Hey guys, hope you had a good holiday. This was a fun murder mystery, but dark for Marvel. Again, the animation was gorgeous. The watcher in the background several times, really enforcing that this is a tale of the multiverse. No one caught that Hope was killed by the Winter Soldier. She took the mission that got Black Widow shot. It's the story she tells Steve in Winter Soldier, the film. I totally forgot that the Avengers were formed in the same week. This show is living up to the comic counterpart, Jerry in Niceville." Very good catch. Completely missed. Yeah, wow.
That's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that was the mission that that Hope was killed in, was the one that Black Widow was shot, the one that she saw the famed Winter Soldier, and tells Steve about it. So that's another interesting change to the universe. Thanks for that, Jerry.
Yes. We also have some feedback from Coffee and Vodka, who sent an email to say this. "Hello, whodunit defenders. A war story, a heist, and now an Agatha Christie-style mystery. Variation in more than just timeline, all wrapped up in the best animation. The best element, though, has been in the writing, with this episode being no exception. It was great seeing both Nick Fury and Natasha as central characters, as well as seeing Clint, a silent, silkily maned Thor, Banner, Hulk, Betty, and the rest. It was also a nice touch showing Hank Pym with his classic comic book accurate, violently abusive attitude.
It's true.
He's never been a nice guy. Just ask his ex-wife and Ultron.
That's very true.
The standout, however, was Agent Coulson. Like the dude's rug, he held the episode together and provided the best scene in the series thus far. I'm not going to tell you my password, Romanoff. The one element I had issue with was not being allowed to try and solve the mystery along with Nick due to the lack of clues outside of a burst needle. Finally, the more present watcher causes one to think he will eventually become actively involved. For the same reason, I can't shake the thought of him in the Daily Bugle offices drinking coffee and shooting the breeze with J. Jonah Jameson. All in all, a near perfect episode. 4 tiny murderers out of 5. Enjoy your holiday, Coffee and Vodka.
Thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka. We did enjoy our holiday, and thanks to everybody who sent messages saying enjoy your holiday. We don't take them very often over here at TV Podcast Industry, so it was great to be away. I definitely take your point about that episode, about episode 3, that it would have been lovely to be able to solve along the whodunit and getting clues as to who it could possibly be. But I kind of loved that reveal, and having Michael Douglas coming back as Hank Pym and this more crazed version of him, much more like his comic book counterparts, is really interesting, because in the movies kind of seen, it's because Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp are more comedy movies than most of the other MCU movies. He's kind of seen as the kindly grandpa who used to be a superhero. Whereas in the comics, he has quite a long history, some very dark. So it's nice that they were able to play with that a little bit in the episode.
It's 100% why they did what they did.
Yeah.
Because the comic book character is not a nice person.
No, he's not.
At all.
All right.
And to the point where they pretty much got rid of him, and Scott Lang is the main.
Well, yeah, exactly. And a really interesting thought after obviously watching episode 4 as we have, Watcher getting closer and closer. He's more passively involved in this episode rather than actively involved. But I think you're right. Yeah, by the end of the season, we'll probably have him actively involved. Thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka. Let's pop on over to Facebook for some more thoughts about episode 3. First up, Greg Schwam says, I thought this was an interesting exploration of a darker path. Last week we saw how things could go right if certain choices were made, planets saved, larger heroes created, etc. This week we saw one in which things went wrong, but one of the aspects that was missing was identifying the one choice that changed the course. I kept hoping for a flashback to show that Fury approached Hope Van Dyne, or that Hank told her the truth about Janet's death, or something. It's one of my favourite parts of these episodes, and while I didn't need to see it initially, I would have liked to know where the path diverged. Having said that, I enjoyed watching the story unfold, the whodunit aspect, although I do seem to have a little pit in my stomach about wondering how badly the story would go after this. Loki enslaved Earth. Captain Marvel murders all the Asgardians. Earth is destroyed. A little similar to if I thought too deeply on the end result of Ego getting to Quill at the end of last week's episode and the potential end to all as we know it. That's pretty dark, Greg.
Yep.
That's pretty dark. Yeah, every episode has kind of ended with these kind of bad stuff potentially on the horizon for everybody, except the first episode with Peggy turning up as Captain Carter in the present to start up the Avengers. That was a pretty positive end for the first episode. And then they've all been pretty bad. Culminating in episode 4, obviously, with the end of a universe, of course. Greg just says, side note as well, if you're interested in what too dark for What If may look like, check out Edge of Spider-Verse number 4. I think this may have been the comic that the What If the Spider had changed Peter Parker into a Spider-Man storyline was based on. That's a really good note, Greg.
Yeah, and that's a really good issue.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's fun. Thank you so much, Greg. And I agree. I think we kind of settled on that it's just Hope joining S.H.I.E.L.D. That seems to be the divergent path. But next up, we have some feedback from Heather Wallace, who had this to say: I am enjoying every episode being a different genre, just like the MCU films themselves. The first episode was a war drama, the second a heist, and this week is a murder mystery. I can't wait for next week. My favorite part this week was Loki saying hello to Hank Pym, but it really made me laugh. I'm impressed with all the voice acting. Although, if I hadn't have seen Jeremy Renner's name in the opening credits, I would have doubted it was him.
Interesting.
I also laughed at Coulson's password, and I knew it would be this week's pub quiz question.
Of course it would be.
Of course it would be.
The second we heard it, we had to do that. Yeah, I love Loki with his hello to Hank Pym. Good impersonation, Chris, as well.
Thank you. I am trying my Tom Hiddleston.
Thanks, Heather. Donald Dennis says, well, that episode took a turn, and wow, the Hulk death flashback got really graphic. It was neat to see, at least for a short period, Loki use his powers to work with S.H.I.E.L.D., but curse his sudden and inevitable betrayal. I think Thor's most unusual power is keeping his hair looking fabulous, even in the rain, instead of looking like a drowned weasel. See, there's a lot more to these Asgardians than the powers we know they have, and nice reference to the Loki episodes there, Donald.
Yes, and it is his power. It is. It's 100%. Next up, we have some feedback from Dr. Bob Phillips, who said, the variety here is magnificent. It's like Marvel has invested in a genre machine for a series. And while I'm sure I didn't get half the Easter eggs and side glances in this one, Sun too very much giggling and nodding to things that drew a blank for me, there was a solidly enough for a casual viewer like me to enjoy. And yes, Donald Dennis, what hair? Which makes me ask the ignorant question, is Coulson straight in Agents of S.W.O.R.D. on Earth series? Because he surely isn't in the multiverse.
You know, I don't even want to give you a real answer to that, Dr. Bob, after calling it Agents of S.W.O.R.D. on Earth series. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the movies. It's never said whether he's just straight or whether he's bi. In the TV show, he does have a relationship with the cellist, played by Amy Acker in the show, and he does have a relationship, of course, with Melinda May in the show, but his love of Captain America does betray that he does have additional feelings. So, yeah, there you go. So not an ignorant question, just not 100% said.
No, not at all. But when you have gods among men walking beside you, yeah, we're all willing to go, look at that luscious hair.
I think that would turn everybody's head, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Dr. Bob. Joe Stavley says, man, this went from being my favourite Marvel thing ever to above average in one episode. I tried to love this one. Watched it 3 times, but it's just so uninteresting to me. Only one word is coming to mind right now, and that's bad, which is completely unfair, but my Marvel standard is very high at this point. Interesting, Joe.
Yeah, no, look, every episode, like every film, doesn't need to be for everyone.
Absolutely.
It is, as Dr. Bob said, it is a genre machine of a series, so hopefully you liked episode 4.
Yeah, I think once the whodunit aspect of that episode is completed, of episode 3 is completed, I think there's not as much replay value. You maybe get one more watch out of it and then you go, okay, now I can see how it all connects together. Whereas episode 4, I must say, watching it the second time on our home TV after watching it while we were on holiday, was far superior than watching it the first time. I thought it was even better, and I can't wait to see that again. So, maybe it's just the episode, Joe. Diana DeBreen Maskell says, I didn't love this episode as much as the others, but there was much to love about it. Coulson and Fury were a continuous delight. I do love how these episodes bring in so many different movies. Excellent, Diana. I totally agree with you. I loved seeing Coulson and Fury together. It's one of my pleasures about watching Captain Marvel is seeing those two actors playing off against each other like they did back in the Avengers. I really enjoyed that.
Yes. Thank you so much, Deanna. We now have some feedback from Brandy, who said, this week it seems the decision that led to these events was bigger than the previous episodes. In episode 1, it was Peggy deciding not to go to the balcony. Episode 2 was T'Challa stepping out of the Wakanda bubble. This episode seems like the catalyst was Hope deciding to be a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. A decision we actually don't get to see because it took place some years ago. We only know she's been dead 2 years. But that decision led to her dying on a mission, which is the reason Hank is seeking vengeance on S.H.I.E.L.D., which leads to 5 of the 6 OG Avengers dying. So now it looks like the Avengers will be made up of their namesake and the first Avenger. It was nice to see a big decision lead to changes and that what appears to be big issues. Yeah, agree, Brandy. Very much agree.
Exactly, and we see it again in this episode, another massive change to a universe caused by one choice. So, yeah, really like that.
It's that what if you took a left instead of a right?
Exactly.
Next up, we have some feedback from Jeff Giles, who says, I like the progression of these episodes. Episode 1 was a familiar territory. It was essentially First Avenger with Peggy instead of Steve. Episode 2 took what we thought would be a familiar in a weird right angle from Guardians. We see what a huge difference a person with character and integrity can make. Episode 3 was a wholly its own thing. While we saw bits and bobs from the films, it was an original story. I'm excited to see where we go from here. Well, Jeff, we've gone somewhere.
And we
Episode 4, we definitely went somewhere.
We definitely did. Thanks very much, Jeff. Finally from Facebook, on episode 3, Claire Laffer says, I can't believe that Mephisto was controlling him to kill all of the Avengers.
It all leads back to Mephisto.
You are never letting it go, Claire, are you?
Have you seen the ones where Strange is Mephisto now in the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer?
Oh, of course.
It's of course. Because it's just, he's cold and lights a fire.
Excellent. Before we go on to some thoughts on this episode, episode 4, we have a few voicemails in. First up, Brandy Elise Anderson sent a message through our website at tvpodcastindustries.com.
I really like Marvel's What If, but I have found myself less inclined to watch the episodes more than once. I'm not even that interested in watching a YouTube reaction on these series, which is something I usually enjoy. And I would say it's even trickled down into the amount of feedback that I've been sharing with my fellow defenders. So I had to wonder, wait, has Marvel given me too much too soon in 2021? I mean, here it is August and we've had 4 series and a movie. And we still have 3 more movies before this year even ends. Don't worry, that's not it. Because I've rewatched the other 3 series and have started one of them since What If has come on. So if I'm not feeling overwhelmed with the amount of Marvel that I'm getting, why am I not connecting to this series the same way I did with the others? And I just think for me, it's the fact that there is no storyline, there's no plot, and nothing that's bringing me back to know what happens next, which is fine because I think that What If feels like filler episodes to the greater series that is the MCU. And filler episodes are fine. They're a nice palate cleanser, but they're not having me on the edge of my feet. And therefore, I'm reacting to them differently. And that's okay.
Thanks, Brandy. Yeah, I think that's one way of looking at it, as a kind of a sorbet palate cleanser between meals.
Yeah.
I think I'm seeing a lot of these different kind of reactions. It was like, I haven't rewatched it 20 times, so it's not as good. I think it's because, as you say, to use the filler, I don't think I like the term filler. I think it's because they're self-contained. They are essentially a single universe in a single story in a single episode.
Yeah.
And that whereas the films, the TV shows are longer. There's more to them. I think very much. There's only so much you can pack in 27 to 33 minutes. So they're not, unless they literally just did Easter egg, Easter egg, Easter egg, Easter egg. It's limited. But it's, look, again, a palate cleanser is a palate cleanser for a reason.
Well, yeah, but the fact that they are trying to do standalone stories every week, you can jump in and watch episode 8 and you can jump in and watch episode 6. That's something that we haven't seen from Marvel before.
Yeah.
We've never seen them do this. And this is their first animated show. So that was, of course, the premise of the What If comics going back from the 70s. It was always pick up an issue and read the one you're interested in. So never really exploring the story further than the one issue. And sometimes you'd have double-sized issues which had a bit more exploration of one story, but it would never really go beyond those issues of What If. So that's exactly how the show is. But I am wondering, we are 4 episodes in, as we said, the central theme here is what your watch is on. And will we see that start to come into the show? And as you look back on the full series, will we have seen the build up to the Watcher coming in and interrupting a timeline or changing something? Is that the way they will have a through line to the stories?
I think so. I think that's where potentially where we're going to go on this. Thank you so much, Brandy. Next up, we've got a final piece of feedback on episode 3 from the one, the only Steve Brown.
Hello, TV Podcast Industries. This is Steve. This is for What If episode 3. What if the world lost its mightiest heroes? Another great multiverse bending kind of show, right? I mean, a lot of implications around, and obviously for the Earth, a huge change. But I absolutely loved the twist at the end of who was the killer, and I can't wait to hear you guys talk about this one and tell us what you thought, what your big moments were for it. And it's just another one. They're just getting better and better. I'm really glad they started with What If Captain Carter was the first Avenger, because these have all just gotten better and better each week, in my opinion. All right. Talk to you later.
Yes, they have, Steve. Yes, they have. That is my
really
feedback and your feedback.
Yeah, and continued on getting better into episode 4. Let's go into some feedback on this episode 4. It is interesting, isn't it, as we watch the episodes and we're reading feedback from people before they'd seen episode 4. It's interesting that everybody's wondering where the show's going to go, and now we see in episode 4 how big the concept can be, I suppose. First up, Jerry sends us an email saying, "Hey guys, this for sure is the darkest episode to date, and probably for the season. Wow, a dark Groundhog Day episode. Is it just me, or did the Ancient One come off as not so smart as she was in the movie, splitting Doctor Strange? Why would she do that? There are parts of the animation that reminded me of the old Lord of the Rings animated movie by Ralph Bakshi. I was watching for Captain Carter to show up in the episode when the tentacle appeared. This was such a downer, though. Just like the original What If comic. What if the Phoenix had not died? Everything just gets totally destroyed. This episode was great, visually outstanding. The Watcher reinforcing what he observes. So dark. So dark." I think it was pretty dark, Jerry, and I know you send your emails in directly after having watched the episodes as well. So I know you must have been still impacted by the darkness of, as I love your description, the dark Groundhog Day. Over and over again, repeating the same thing or trying to change things, trying to save Christine, and all of them falling apart. Thanks, Jerry.
No, thanks, Jerry. That's a nice way of describing it. I think that's one I'll use going forward. Next up, we have an email from Coffee and Vodka. They had this to say: "Greetings, Shakespearean defenders. Take one part tragic loss, a large measure of privilege, half pound of obsession, an ancient library, and the power to see your visions through. Flawless tragedy, simply and beautifully told. We got a strange, more human and less complete, broken on the inside, literally, half blind to the consequences of returning the love which would make him whole. A brilliant cautionary tale that illustrates the no limitations of the What If universe. Not since Infinity War have we had a story so realistically envisioned. Not even any way to shoehorn in my mystic fisticuffs alliteration. 5 out of 5 broken sorcerer hearts." Thank you, Coffee and Vodka. Yeah, it was exactly Shakespearean all she had. I do like the recipe analogy you've just gone from here. It's a nice way of doing it. Well done.
That's very true. Yeah, very, very Shakespearean story here, Coffee Block. I see you enjoyed it exactly as much as we did, really.
Yes.
Thanks so much for the feedback. 084 got in contact with us as well. They had the following thoughts. Some What If 104 feedback. What a downer. In mood, not in quality. The animation really shines here and the exploration of themes and character is top notch. Although it's rather interesting that we're at 2 straight episodes where the crux of the story is a woman dying and a man acting on the pain of that loss. Marvel, have you been sponsored by Frigidaire for this show? That said, both stories have handled that particular trope well. It seems like the writer AC Bradley uses the trope to show her male antagonists focusing more on their own pain than that of their late loved one and turning it onto the world rather than processing it in a healthy way. And it clearly shows their actions as the wrong way to react to loss. It's fitting because men are often chastised by each other more for grieving in healthy ways than unhealthy. Part of me expected Strange Supreme to win this battle over his other half because of the No Way Home theory, that it's a different Doctor Strange Peter is dealing with. And it looks like that's still on the table. The idea of an absolute point on one specific timeline, but not others like ours, is fascinating to me and is definitely going to spark conversation about absolute points versus Nexus event versus Nexus beings. In my mind, an absolute point is a required event in one specific timeline. A Nexus event is just something that strays too far from He Who Remains Sacred timeline. And the MCU's version of a Nexus being like Wanda is somebody who is too powerful for the TVA to prune. Until next time, and Shang-Chi feedback 084. Thanks 084. Great thoughts there.
Yeah, thanks 084. I agree with pretty much all of it bar the essentially the Nexus beings.
Okay.
Because I think the Nexus beings, the way that they're describing to date is that those who can alter the multiverse at a scale of the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
So Wanda can alter the multiverse. Doctor Strange can alter the multiverse. That they are Nexus beings. They are the pinnacle points. And yes, then the He Who Shall Not Remain can conquer Nexus beings because they can alter it at a fundamental level. And I think that's where they're going. Happy to be proven wrong on that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Next up, we have some feedback, a small piece from Shamise, who said, "The Watcher speaks. This is a bittersweet episode. You knew it was only going to end in ultimate destruction, but the ride to the end was so worth it."
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. I think that's the kind of majority of the feedback we got throughout this from most people is it was dark, deep, but worth the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Parthenia also sent her thoughts on the series so far. She said, "Hello there, fellow defenders. I have really been enjoying the What If series. I'm not sure if I ever really intended to watch it, but I'm glad I am. The episodes are great. Your reviews, as always, are enjoyable. I love hearing what you think the episode title will be. I think I would enjoy watching each episode without knowing the title. For example, knowing that episode 3 was titled What If the World Lost Its Mightiest Heroes? Kind of a spoiler alert. Initially, when I saw Tony Stark kneel over after getting shot in the neck, I thought he was joking. But then I remember the heroes are dying in this episode. So I caught on rather quickly to be more obvious point that he was dead. I have a question, and it may be a dumb one, but please help me understand the timeline. Nick Fury had the Avengers Initiative files, and Thor was one of the heroes on the wish list. But wasn't this his first encounter with the man with the beautiful hair? Did he already know of Thor? I know that I'm just missing something, but please help me here. I'm so confused. Thanks so much, Parthenia.
Yeah, I don't think you're missing anything there, Parthenia. I think you've just pointed out that it is not
flawed.
Correct. Yeah. The hammer that's in the desert that Coulson goes to investigate in the comic and in the movie, that's the initial indication that something powerful is there, but Thor isn't technically on the Avengers roster. I wonder if Hank is there and takes out Hawkeye and realizes that Thor is also a very powerful being and takes him out at the same time. I wonder if that's what's happening, but I don't think Nick Fury had a list of the potential people in the Avengers Initiative at this stage, even though this episode tells us that that's what Hank is working off to kill all the future Avengers. Because as we said in our episode discussion, technically Tony Stark isn't an Avenger. He became a consultant. He wasn't an Avenger until after the events that brought Loki to Earth with Thanos' troops, right? So technically he was probably looking for just very powerful people, potentially. Maybe that was it.
Yeah, I think that's it.
There you go.
I think they were there to kill Hawkeye, and essentially he just took out Thor as a happy accident.
Could be completely wrong, but that's an interesting point you've uncovered there, Bithynia.
Yes, thank you so much, Bithynia. Bithynia actually went on to ask a few more questions and kind of a bit more feedback. She said this. Also, how exactly did Loki know his brother was dead? Did Heimdall tell them? The news travelled incredibly fast. Yes, Heimdall. Yeah.
Has to
exactly
be.
What that one.
Heimdall's watching out for the death of any of the gods of Asgard, right?
Yes, pretty much. She goes on to say, I didn't expect Pym to be the villain. I also hadn't decided if I liked the part of the story. It was a bit of a letdown. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. I've also enjoyed everything else. Captain Carter was cute. In my opinion, she looked like a 90s WWE female wrestler. The only thing I didn't like about that episode was it alluded to girl power, but Steve, a man, was still there trying to help save the day. Episode 3 and 4 had me the most engaged. The Doctor Strange episode, loved it. Didn't expect any of that to happen. I never predicted that was what was next. And finally, the Watcher that had been looming and getting seemingly closer in each episode has finally spoken to our main character. I thought this was the moment where he finally was going to get his hands dirty and help the stupid human from making another grave mistake. But he didn't. And that was very interesting. I can't wait to see what's next. I feel it build up to something more. Hope you two enjoyed your holidays. Thanks to the three of you for providing this space. Keep it up. Loyal fan here. The one, the only, Bithynia Locklear. Thank you, Parthenia. We will continue to keep this up as long as you all continue to listen.
Exactly. Even if one of you is listening.
Yeah.
We will
Then it's just a Zoom call at that point, and it's fine.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Parthenia. I'm really glad you're enjoying the series as well. There's lots of twists and turns in this show that you just have no idea what way it's going to go. The minds of the writers for this show are fantastic. Finally on email, Victor Sellers asks a question. Who is this kind, self-deprecating Doctor Strange in this episode? He is in love with someone other than himself? Should the paradox have started here before the death of Christine? Somebody please explain, Victor Von Doom. I think we actually talked about this a little bit in the episode, Victor, that there is just that tiny twist that Christine is coming along for this meal with Stephen. And because she dies, he realizes how much he really loves her. But you are right, as I think John mentioned, just that probably wouldn't have even gotten to that point if it was the movie version of Doctor Strange. I don't think it takes place exactly at the point. It looks like they've had a little bit of a relationship. She seems a little bit more open with Stephen in these moments than she was when we saw her in the movie. So there is a slight difference, but that's the fun of the storytelling and What If, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's pop on over to Facebook. First up, Heather Wallace says, I wonder how long it took the writers to come up with absolute point in time as an alternative for fixed point in time to avoid Doctor Who copyright infringements.
Quite a long time.
I would say so. I absolutely thought the same thing. If you've watched Doctor Who over the last 10 years since it came back, they use fixed point in time to explain why Doctor Who can't just, wave his magic screwdriver and sort out every single problem.
Hold on, sonic screwdriver.
I know.
Come on.
I know. It's because the episode was about sorcery, so I was combining the two.
Sure,
yes, I know it was sonic screwdriver, Chris. I've been watching it for 10 years longer than you, mate. Only because I'm older.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Heather. Continuing our Facebook feedback, we have feedback from Joe Steinley, who said, "What a dark, heartbreaking, and absolutely amazing episode. This was the first episode without a recast, and shout out to Leslie Bibb for returning as Christine Everhart." Yeah, as Derek called out, that was great.
It is. It's
Good
really
catch.
Interesting, isn't it? And so amazing to see all of that cast return. A lot of them obviously would have been filming in London on the second Doctor Strange movie, so they'd all be close together and still under Marvel. Like even having Tilda Swinton back as the Ancient One in this episode, that's a real surprise because that she filmed that movie 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago. So and there isn't the greatest reaction about the Ancient One. from the general public. So great to have her back in here. I do wonder if she's opened the door for having her return in the Multiverse of Madness. This idea that she's able to talk to Stephen in here because of an echo that she's left behind after she's died. I wonder, is that indicating that in Multiverse of Madness we may see Tilda Swinton back in there?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Strong potential there.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Ronaldo also shared his thoughts. He says, what a very different and dark tale. I didn't expect that, but by the end I was left as alone as when it all turned black. Cumberbatch has done so well. And good to hear at least Rachel McAdams in more of her role. To have such a bleak ending though really gave it a point of difference. I've been loving all the episodes so far. They each bring something interesting to the table. Definitely, Ronaldo. Yeah, totally agree with that. Donald Dennis says, while I still liked it so far, this is my least favourite episode, probably because it felt like a different character in Strange's body. In the movies, it never seemed like he cared that much about anyone. I realise it is the nature of time loops, but wow, this felt repetitive, like they were filling time. When I saw what looked like the Watcher's shape appear in Strange's shadow, I really thought he'd consumed the Watcher. But wow, it was beautiful. Lots of neat art. As a librarian, I would legit hate to have Armani as a patron. Also, if Armani's summoning of the Hydra Beast was before World War II, and it looks like it was, that may explain why the beast was so violent when Red Skull summoned it, assuming he's multidimensional. Interesting. So, Strange summons the beast twice, right? The tentacle beast twice.
Yep.
And removes tentacles the second time he summons it, sending it back out of their dimension. So, maybe he summoned it before World War II. Captain Carter pushed it back in through the portal. Strange pulled it back out, chopped off some of the tentacles, releasing Peggy into present day. Then maybe that's the connection between the timelines. How about that one?
That could work. Potentially, but that means Captain Carter's dead now.
No. Captain Carter was pushed out into the universe when Strange cut off some of the tentacles.
But when she came
maybe.
back at the end, remember?
Maybe that's it. You know?
Could be. Could be.
Thanks, Donald.
Thanks, Donald. Dr. Bob had this to say. Well, after the last 18 months of deep, dark reality, ending with that searing despair of the world ended by a misguided and dug-up decision taken by some entitled, posh, cis male, straight white guy for his own satisfaction over that of the world at large. Core blimey. On the other hand, I'd love to see a bit of heterochromia iridium, different coloured eyes for old Bang. And I bet the Funko Pop of misguided Doctor Strange will be amazing. Yep, it will be. 100%. I've seen some artwork. It was already on Twitter. It looks fantastic.
It does.
So cool.
It does. And remember, if you enter the What If pub quiz, you could be in with a chance of winning the Doctor Strange Funko Pop, or one of them at least. Do you know what I found really interesting when I saw this feedback in from Dr. Bob Phillips? What? The different coloured eyes, the heterochromia iridium. I never knew before, because I was checking out what it meant. Unfortunately, I don't have it at the top of my mind, Dr. Bob. I was checking out what it meant. I never realised until I looked it up that Benedict Cumberbatch has this exact condition. He has a specific version of it where when you look at his eyes in different ways, he has 3 different eye colours that could be dominant, effectively. So, isn't that really interesting?
Oh, God. Why are these people so, like... It's like the Olympians during the Olympics and even the Paralympics. I'm looking at these people going, God, you're so much better than me.
I don't know whether it be...
Benedict Cumberbatch's eyes are better than my eyes.
Well, I don't think it has a power of changing the eye colour. I think it's just, depending on the light in the room, it can look between blue or green or brown, I think is the other, gold is the other colour. So I found that really interesting.
Yeah, no,
definitely. And then incorporating it into an animated show as well. That's really cool. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Yes, thank you. Richard Blaze had this to say. That episode was equally beautiful, poignant, and disturbing. Easily my favourite one so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. A story of 3 parts. Beautiful, poignant, and disturbing.
There you go.
Deanna Debreen Mascal had this to say. Beautiful, heartbreaking, and of course, this is how the world will end. Death by hubris.
There you go.
It's a doctor. Of course it has to be death by hubris. Victor Sellers but went on to say, powerful episode. This Doctor Strange could rival Wanda Maximoff on coping with grief. Perhaps they could compare notes somewhere in the multiverse.
Perhaps that's exactly what they'll be doing in the multiverse of madness.
You got there before me. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Victor. AJ Ebersol says, it's a very dark and sad thought to have all this power, but you can't save the one you love without ruining the universe, which also destroys the one you love. The music played during the credits was so powerful and sad that it really made me feel the pain and hurt that Doctor Strange was feeling. I also love the Watcher interacting with one of our characters. Is he going to start interfering with these multiverses and decisions? Did anyone else notice how similar the evil Doctor Strange looked to the Doctor Strange on the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer? Especially when Peter was battling Doctor Strange on the train? Is this one of the What If episodes that expands into more detail? I absolutely love the show and can't wait for next week. I also love the podcast and look forward to hearing your thoughts each week. Thanks, AJ. I'm still not too sure how similar this Doctor Strange looked to the Doctor Strange in the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. I did enjoy the trailer. I must admit I've seen it twice, but that's as far as I'm going to go. I hate going too in depth and spoiling myself for a movie because I watched the trailer too many times. So I'm not too sure how close he looked. I think he was just cold in snow.
Yeah, as we all were. It is coming into winter, and he has a big hole in his roof. Although the hole in the roof theory is still kind of... Anyway, I'm not going down this rabbit hole.
Okay.
It is Mephisto. We're not going down this rabbit hole.
We're not.
Let's move on
Thanks,
to the
AJ.
next piece. Thanks very much, AJ. Appreciate your feedback. We also have a piece of feedback from Jeff Childs, who said, I didn't catch it on my first watch. At the beginning of this episode, Doctor Strange is on his way to accept an award for a radical hemispherectomy, a procedure that removes half the brain or separates the two hemispheres. This foreshadows the Ancient One creating a Nexus event that separates the two Doctor into two halves.
Wow.
Damn, Jeff.
Jeff Giles, well done. I would give you the magnificent call out from the collector from Guardians of the Galaxy. Fantastic catch there. And of course, that's what's meant. It is a different procedure than the one he gets the award for in Doctor Strange. So I'm sure they specifically chose that. That's a really good catch. And sorry, Chris, you've gotten all the medical procedures in our feedback this week, but it is Doctor Strange. So
luckily, I'm not editing it, so the 50 takes it took to get that one name does not matter.
That's my
Our
job.
final piece of feedback from Facebook comes from Claire Laffa, who added, it was incredible at the end when he turned into a big old Mephisto. Yep.
It's not going to work, Claire. It's not going to happen. Until the final episode is what if everyone in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was Mephisto.
Is Mephisto.
There you go. Thanks so much, Claire. To close out our feedback on episode 4, we have some thoughts from Steve Brown.
Whoa, such a good episode. Hey, this is Steve. This is for What If episode 4, the Doctor Strange one. Wow, so dark. I have no words. I have no words at all. This one's going to take multiple watches to get over it. But wow, such a strong episode. Can't wait to hear everybody's takes on this one.
Thanks so much, Steve. Yeah, in shock there, I see. And you probably heard it in the background a little bit there. Exactly as AJ said, the music from the end of the episode was fantastic. A really emotional piece that was written there. I think I was talking to Matt Murdock about this on Twitter last week. He didn't send in any thoughts about the music from this episode because he was totally expecting the Doctor Strange theme would be changed because we had a different style of Doctor Strange. They did use the Doctor Strange theme right at the beginning when he's standing outside talking to Christine. We hear a few strains of the Doctor Strange theme tune, but from then on, it's a reasonably original score. We do hear just little bits of it throughout the episode, but mostly original score for this episode, and it is fantastic.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I don't know. I think I've only got one more viewing of this one in me as of the moment. I'll probably do a secondary full season rewatch at some point.
Right.
Once we get the full season done.
You don't want to watch it too many more times, or else you'll have
then
a bad
just,
evening.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much just kind of depressing, you know. Yeah. The whole universe ends.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, it's been a great episode. We've shared lots of thoughts on the episode here, but I think I'll be watching this reasonably often. Until at least we get Doctor Strange 2 out there. Thanks to everyone who's been sending us some feedback. You can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with any of your thoughts. You can also head on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. You can find us over on Twitter at tvpodindustries or on Instagram, of course. You can see us at TV Podcast Industries there as well. Thanks so much for joining us for this discussion.
Yes, thank you so much. Please make sure you head on over to your podcast catcher of choice or any of the major Apple, Spotify, Google podcast players, and you can like, share, subscribe, because sharing the podcast is sharing the love. You can also head on over to support this little old wee business we do in the corner by heading on over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where for a single supreme sorcerer dollar, no, it still doesn't work, a magically infused dollar, you can help keep the lights on. You can help keep the engines going and our podcast coming into your audio receptacles, also known as ears. If you'd like to help with a single donation, why not head over to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, where you can buy our illustrious editor a single coffee. Because this is a 2-hour plus podcast, and it's gonna be a long edit for him.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much. If you'd like to subscribe or get any of those links, head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe, like, share, blah, 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 and do all the fun things. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back to chat about What If Episode 5 next week.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah,
You've been enjoying What If, haven't you?
I have.
What if every creature on the planet with the Y chromosome died instantly? That is the premise of the next show that we're going to be covering on TV Podcast Industries. Why the Last Man starts in the US on the 13th of September. And then in the UK and Ireland, we're going to be getting the first 3 episodes released on Star on Disney Plus from the 22nd of September. And I think you're going to enjoy the show. If you've liked What If, the premise that they're using here for Why the Last Man, based on an excellent comic book by Brian Vaughan and P. Guerra. Excellent comic book. Going to be a really good series. What do you think? Do you think people are going to enjoy it, Chris?
Oh, they're going to love it.
Yeah.
If you like Walking Dead.
Yes.
If you like comic books. If you like... I don't know how to put... I can't even put my face... If you like really well-told stories, there's a high potential you will like this show.
There you go. Well, that sounds like everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. If you liked HBO Watchmen, potentially you will like this.
Maybe.
If you like Lovecraft Country, potentially you will like this.
There you go.
If you
So that's coming out.
any other show, you will like this.
So that's coming out in the next couple of weeks. Until then, we of course will be back with What If Episode 5 next week.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. And in the immortal words of our dearly departed John, keep watching, keep listening, keep defending. He's not dead, he's just gone downstairs.
He's just departed the room. That's it.
He's departed the room. It is still departing.
It is. Thanks so much. Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.